I didn't disappear because I wanted to run. I disappeared because if I stayed, I would not have survived emotionally. I sold the only house I had, closed the door on a lifetime of memories, and left in silence like someone fleeing from a danger that existed inside their own family. Welcome to this story. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from also. Please note that some details have been fictionalized to clarify the message. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental, but the pain, betrayal, and the lesson behind it are entirely real, because a 68-year-old mother had to run from her own son as if she were escaping a predator, because that is what Marcus became to me, a predator. And his wife Kesha, along with that entire family of vipers she brought into my life, were the perfect accomplices to my destruction. But I did not let myself be destroyed. I made a decision that many would call cruel, others would say was extreme, but for me, it was the only way to survive. And if you stay with me until the end of this story, you will understand why I do not regret a single thing. Why every document I signed, every box I packed, every tear I shed in silence while I planned my escape was worth it. Because there are moments in life when you have to choose between remaining the victim or becoming your own savior. And I chose to save myself. I know what it feels like to be alone at this stage of life. I know what it is to wake up every morning asking yourself if anyone really cares about you, or if you are just a resource to be exploited until you serve no purpose. For years, I swallowed that reality. I convinced myself it was normal, that this is just how modern families are, that I was being dramatic. But there was something inside me, a small voice that grew louder and louder, telling me no, that this was not right, that no one deserves to be treated the way I was being treated. And that voice was right. But it reached a point where that voice no longer whispered, it screamed. And finally, I listened. What I am going to tell you is not just my story, it is the story of thousands of older folks who are invisible to their own families, who are treated like nuisances, like ATM machines, like obstacles to the inheritance their children already consider their own. And if you, listening to me now, identify with anything I am about to say, I want you to know that you are not alone, that there is a way out, that it is never too late to take back your dignity. It all started 3 months ago. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those gray days where time seems to move slower. Marcus and Kesha had been especially distant for the last few weeks. Whispered phone calls, doors closing when I entered a room, knowing glances that did not include explanations. I tried not to think too much about it. After all, they had been married for 5 years and I had learned to give them their space. Kesha never liked me. I knew that from the first day I met her. The way she looked at me as if I were some old furniture that needed to be replaced, something obsolete taking up too much space. But Marcus seemed happy with her, and that was the only thing that mattered to me. Lord, what a fool I was. How blind, how naive to believe that a mother's love was enough to keep a son close when there was a woman poisoning his ear every day. That Tuesday, Marcus came into the kitchen where I was fixing dinner. He had that expression I had learned to recognize, that mixture of anticipated guilt and discomfort. He was coming to ask for something. That look always came before the requests. Mama, I need you to loan me some money. Mama, we're going to stay here a few more months until we find something. Mama, Kesha is a little stressed. Try not to bother her. Mama, mama, mama. Always mama when he needed something, but never mama when it came to including me in his plans, in his joys, in his real life. I turned toward him with a smile that came automatically by now. That mother's smile that endures everything, that forgives everything, that never says no. Marcus, baby, what's wrong? And he, without looking me directly in the eyes, dropped the bomb on me like he was talking about the weather. Mama, I need your credit cards, all 3 of them. Kesha and I have to make some important purchases this week. I'll give them back to you next Monday. Something inside me tensed up. He had never asked for all 3 cards at the same time. 1, yes, maybe 2 in case of an emergency, but all 3? "What do you need all three for, Marcus?" He shrugged his shoulders with that indifference that broke my heart. "I already told you, important purchases. Don't worry, Mama. Trust me." Trust me. Those words echoed in my head for days afterward. Trust me, said the son I had raised alone after his father died when he was barely 8 years old. Trust me, said the man for whom I paid full college tuition by working double shifts. Trust me, said the one living in my house rent-free while he saved for his future. A future that apparently did not include me, but I wanted to believe. I needed to believe. So I took the 3 cards out of my wallet and handed them to him. Marcus took them without even saying thank you. He just nodded, mumbled a quick, "See you later," and walked out of the kitchen. I heard him say something to Kesha in a low voice in the hallway. I heard her laugh, a laugh that sounded like victory. And something inside me knew, in that moment I knew, that I had just made a terrible mistake. But I still didn't know how terrible it was. I didn't know yet that those cards were going to be used to fund a betrayal so big it would change my life forever. The next 3 days were strange. Marcus and Kesha practically disappeared from the house. They left early and came back late. When I asked where they had been, the answers were vague. Running errands, handling business. "Don't worry, Mama." I tried to check the card activity online, but every time I did, the system told me there was an error to try again later. I called the bank and they told me everything was in order, that there was no problem with my account, but something didn't feel right. Something was happening and I wasn't seeing it. On Friday night, Marcus came into my room. "Mama, Kesha and I are going out of town for the weekend. We might stay until Wednesday. Some friends invited us to their cabin. I need to rest a bit from work." It seemed odd to me. Marcus never took impromptu vacations, but I nodded. "All right, son. Have fun." He left without saying anything else, without a hug, without a kiss on the forehead like when he was a boy. He just left, and I remained sitting on my bed, staring at the walls of that room where I had cried so many nights after becoming a widow, wondering when exactly I had lost my son. At what moment had the sweet boy who used to hug me and tell me I was his favorite person in the world turned into this cold stranger who barely looked at me? Saturday morning, I woke up to a strange silence in the house, that type of silence that makes you feel uncomfortable in your own home. Marcus and Kesha had already gone. They didn't leave a note. They didn't say what time they would be back exactly. Nothing. Just that heavy emptiness filling every corner. I made myself some coffee and sat in the living room, trying to shake off that feeling of unease that wouldn't let me breathe right. I turned on the television to distract myself, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. My eyes kept going toward the door of Marcus and Kesha's room, toward that space that used to be my sewing room, which I had given up when they got married and needed privacy. Privacy to conspire against me, as it turned out. But I didn't know that yet. I was still in that bubble of denial where mothers live when we don't want to accept that our children are capable of hurting us. I spent the day cleaning the house. I always clean when I'm nervous. It's my way of keeping my hands busy while my mind spins round and round. I cleaned the kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, and when I finished with the common areas, I stood in front of Marcus and Kesha's bedroom door. Normally, I respected their space. I never entered without permission. But that day, something pushed me to turn the doorknob. "I'm just going to air it out a little," I told myself. "Just going to open the window, that's all." I walked in, and the smell of Kesha's expensive perfume hit me immediately. That perfume that always seemed too intense, too pretentious to me. I opened the window and a fresh breeze came in. I turned to leave when something on the desk caught my attention. Marcus's old cell phone, the one he had replaced 2 months ago with a new one. It was there, connected to the charger with the screen lit up. Apparently, he still used it for something. My hand moved before my brain could stop it. I picked up the phone. It didn't have a passcode. Marcus was always careless with those things. The screen showed several open applications, and there at the top, I saw notifications from a messaging app, many notifications from a group named Kesha's Family. My heart started. Welcome to this story. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from also. Please note that some details have been fictionalized to clarify the message. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental, but the pain, betrayal, and the lesson behind it are entirely real. Beating faster. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew I was invading their privacy. But something stronger than my sense of propriety made me tap that notification. And in that moment, my life changed forever. The group had hundreds of messages. I scrolled down to the most recent ones, and the first thing I saw froze my blood. It was a message from Kesha sent that very morning. We're already at the airport. Marcus is nervous that the old woman might notice something. I told him to calm down. She's too stupid to check the card statements. The old woman. She called me the old woman. My hands started to tremble. I kept reading. Patricia, Kesha's mother, had responded. Good thing your mother-in-law is so naive. My daughter knows how to handle these situations. When we get back, we'll already have everything in motion with the lawyer. That house is going to be ours before she realizes it. Raymond, Kesha's father, had sent a thumbs-up emoji and then written, Marcus is a good boy. He knows how to obey. Not like those mother-in-laws who cause problems. This one lets herself be manipulated easily. I felt as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over me. I kept scrolling down the conversation, and every message was worse than the last. Marcus had written, I feel like I'm betraying my mama, but you guys are right. She's already old, and the house is too big for her alone. It's better that it's in our hands before she does something stupid with the property. Kesha had replied to him, Babe, it's not betrayal. It's smart planning. Your mama is going to be better off in a small place where she doesn't have to worry about maintenance. We'll take care of everything. Better off in a small place. They were talking about me as if I were a piece of furniture that needed to be relocated, as if my opinion didn't matter, as if this house, which had been my sanctuary for 40 years, which my late sister Catherine had left me with so much love, was something they could simply take. I kept reading with tears falling down my cheeks. There were messages from days ago planning this trip. It wasn't a weekend at a cabin with friends. It was a full week's trip to Miami. With Kesha's entire family. Patricia had written, I already booked the hotel, 5 stars, right on the beach. We're going to enjoy these days properly. After all, Kesha's mother-in-law is paying for everything without knowing, Raymond had responded. Excellent. I also made reservations at the best restaurants. We're going to live like kings this week and let the old woman pick up the tab. Marcus had sent, I used Mama's 3 cards. Between all of them, they have a limit of almost $20,000. It should be enough for everything. $20,000. They had planned to spend $20,000 of my savings. Money I had gathered over years of working until my body ached. Money I had saved for my old age, for medical emergencies, so I wouldn't be a burden on anyone. And they were spending it on luxury hotels and expensive restaurants while calling me a stupid old woman. But the worst had not yet arrived. I kept scrolling down the conversation until I found messages from 2 weeks ago, messages where they discussed their real plan. Patricia had written a long message. Kesha, I spoke with our lawyer. He says if Marcus can get his mother to sign a power of attorney, we can start the process of transferring the property. It won't be immediate, but we can start preparing the ground. He also says if she is showing signs of senility or mental incapacity, the process is faster. Kesha had responded, My mother-in-law is perfectly lucid, Mama. We can't invent that. Patricia, there's nothing to invent, honey. You just have to document forgetfulness, confusion, erratic behaviors. All old folks have those moments. You just have to record them on video when they happen and present them as evidence that she cannot handle her own affairs. Raymond, Patricia is right. I know 3 cases where it worked perfectly. The family managed to get total control of the elderly person's properties using that method. It is legal if done right. Marcus, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. Kesha, baby, think about our future. Think about the children we are going to have. We need that house. Your mama is going to be better cared for in a home anyway. She can't handle all that space anymore. It's for her own good. For my own good. They wanted to lock me in a facility, steal my house, and convince themselves it was for my own good. I felt a rage so deep I thought I was going to explode, but I kept reading because I needed to know everything. I needed to see how far this betrayal went. And what I found next destroyed me in a way I never imagined possible. There was a message from Kesha from a week ago. "Guys, my mother-in-law asked me today if she could go with us to the festival next month. I told her no, that it was a couples-only event. She looked so sad. It almost made me laugh." Patricia had responded, "Well done, daughter. You have to keep isolating her socially. The fewer connections she has, the easier everything will be." Raymond, "Exactly. Old folks without a support network are easier to handle." Marcus, "Sometimes I feel like I'm too hard on her. Yesterday she asked if we could have dinner together, and I told her I was busy. Her eyes filled with tears." Kesha, "Marcus, don't be soft. It's part of the process. If you start giving in now, we're going to lose momentum. Remember what we said, emotional distance, so that when the time for the transition comes, it won't be so difficult for you." Emotional distance. They had planned to distance themselves from me deliberately. All those times Marcus had avoided my conversations, rejected my invitations to cook together, walked out when I entered the room. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't that he was busy. It was a cold and calculated strategy to break my heart little by little, to make me feel invisible in my own house, to prepare me for the day they would kick me out of my own home. The tears were falling so fast I could barely see the screen. But I continued reading, because I needed to know it all. I found another message from Patricia that made me feel physically sick. "Althea is the perfect type of old woman for this. She doesn't have many friends. She doesn't go out much. Her only real family was her sister, and she's dead. Marcus is all she has. That gives us a total advantage." Raymond, "Plus, she's one of those old-school women who do everything for their children. She would never report us or cause problems. She is too submissive." Kesha, "Exactly. That's why I chose well. A man with a mother like that was perfect for what we needed." Chose well. Kesha had chosen Marcus because I was vulnerable, because I was alone, because I had sacrificed so much for my son that they knew I would never confront him. I let myself fall onto Marcus's bed, with the phone still in my trembling hands. My whole body shook uncontrollably. It wasn't just rage I felt. It was something much deeper and more painful. It was the sensation of having been completely destroyed by the only people I had trusted, by the son to whom I had given everything, absolutely everything. I closed my eyes trying to process what I had just read, but the words kept resonating in my head like blows. "Stupid old woman. Too submissive. I chose well. Easy to handle." Every phrase was a knife sticking deeper into my chest. I stayed there lying down for how long? Maybe minutes, maybe hours. The sun was starting to set when I finally sat up. I had to keep reading. I had to know everything before they came back, before they could erase the evidence or change their plans. I needed to know every detail of this betrayal to be able to protect myself. I went back to the phone and looked for older conversations. I found the exact moment where it all started. 8 months ago, Kesha had started a conversation with her parents. "Mama, Daddy, I have an idea. My mother-in-law's house is worth at least $400,000 according to the city tax assessment. It's in a neighborhood that's appreciating a lot. If we manage to get it in our name, we could sell it in a couple of years and make a lot of money, or keep it and rent out our part while we live there." Patricia had responded immediately. "I like how you think, daughter, but it has to be subtle. No obvious pressure. This has to look like a natural transition." Raymond had added, "I know a lawyer who specializes in these things. Property transfers from the elderly to family members. He works on cases where the old folks are prevented from managing their assets. He can guide us." Kesha, "Perfect, Daddy. I'm going to start working on Marcus. He is the weak link. If I manage to convince him it's the best thing for his mama, everything will be easier." Working on Marcus. My son hadn't been the mastermind of this. He had been the victim of manipulation, but that did not excuse him because he had chosen to go along with it. He had chosen to betray me even knowing it was wrong. I found the conversation where Kesha presented the idea to Marcus. It was 6 months ago. "Babe, I need to talk to you about something important. Your mama is getting older, and this house is too much responsibility for her. I've been thinking that maybe we should consider helping her move to a smaller, more manageable place. We could keep the house and take better care of it." Marcus had responded, "I don't know, Kesha. This house means a lot to my mama. My Aunt Catherine left it to her. They were very close." Kesha: "Exactly why, babe. It's too much pain for her. Every corner reminds her of her dead sister. She would be better off in a new place where she can start from scratch. Besides, think about our future. Think about the babies we want to have. We need space. We need stability. Your mama would understand if you explained it to her, right?" And so it had started, with lies disguised as concern, with manipulation wrapped in sweet words about my well-being. Marcus had resisted at first. There were messages where he expressed doubts, where he said he didn't feel right about the idea. But Kesha was persistent, and her parents bombarded him with arguments. Little by little, they wore down his resistance until finally, Marcus gave in. I watched it happen in those messages. I saw how my son was turned into an accomplice to my destruction, message after message. But there was something else that destroyed me completely. I found a conversation where they spoke specifically about my sister Catherine. Patricia had written, "The fact that the sister left the house directly to Althea and not to Marcus is a problem. It means she wanted to protect her from something. We're going to have to be very careful." Raymond: "Or maybe the sister was just a stupid old woman too and didn't think about the legal implications." Kesha: "My mother-in-law says her sister made her promise she would never sell the house, that it was so she would always have a safe home." Marcus: "Yeah, my Aunt Catherine made her swear that on her deathbed. My mama cried for months after she died." Kesha: "Well, promises to the dead aren't legal contracts. Once the house is in our name, we can do whatever we want." We can do whatever we want. They were talking about breaking the sacred promise I had made to my dying sister as if it were nothing, as if Catherine's last wish was a minor inconvenience they could ignore. My sister had worked all her life to buy that house. She never married, never had children. She left it to me because she knew I had suffered so much after becoming a widow, because she wanted to ensure I always had a roof over my head. And these people wanted to destroy that gift of love as if it were trash. I kept reading and found the detailed plans. They had divided the process into phases. Phase 1, isolate me emotionally so I would depend more on Marcus. Phase 2, document any forgetfulness or confusion of mine as evidence of mental incapacity. Phase 3, convince me to sign a power of attorney under the pretext of helping me with my finances. Phase 4, use that power to transfer the property. Phase 5, convince me to move to a facility or small apartment. And if I resisted, they had a plan B. Patricia had described it coldly. If Althea refuses to cooperate, we can use the evidence of mental incapacity to initiate a guardianship process. The lawyer says that with good testimonies and documentation, we can get a judge to take away her legal capacity to handle her properties. Then Marcus, as the only son, automatically becomes legal guardian and can make decisions for her. Guardianship. They wanted to declare me mentally incompetent to rob me of everything. Me, who still read 3 books a month. Me, who handled all my accounts without a problem. Me, who had never forgotten a doctor's appointment or a commitment. They wanted to invent a dementia that didn't exist to justify their theft. There was more evidence on that phone. Screenshots of properties for sale that Kesha had saved, luxury houses they planned to buy with the money from the sale of my house. There were messages talking about how they would decorate my home once I wasn't there. Kesha had written, "I'm going to throw out all that old furniture of Althea's. That outdated style gives me nausea. We're going to do a complete renovation. Modern, minimalist, elegant." Patricia: "You can donate her things to charity or throw them out. Old folks accumulate so much trash without real sentimental value." Raymond: "The important thing is that you act fast once she's out. Don't give her time to regret it or cause problems." Marcus: "She isn't going to cause problems, trust me. I know my mama. She is very docile." Docile. My son thought I was docile. And maybe he was right. I had been docile all my life. I had accepted the mistreatment, the indifference, the financial abuse, all without complaining, because I believed that is how you loved. I believed that sacrificing in silence was what good mothers did. But as I read those messages, something inside me broke. Or maybe it fixed itself. Maybe for the first time in my life, something settled into its rightful place. I took screenshots of everything, every conversation, every plan, every insult. My own cell phone filled up with evidence, hundreds of images documenting the biggest betrayal I had ever experienced. When I finished, it was almost 10 at night. I had spent hours reading, crying, trembling with rage. I got up from Marcus's bed and left his phone exactly where I had found it, connected to the charger. I walked out of that room and closed the door. I walked to the kitchen like an automaton and made myself some tea. My hands were still shaking so much that I spilled hot water on the counter. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except one thing, a truth that had just crystallized in my mind with brutal clarity. I could not stay here. I could not continue being the docile victim they expected. I could not wait for them to execute their plan and leave me with nothing. I had to act first. I had to protect myself. And I had to do it in a way they could never predict. Because if I had learned anything in those hours reading their conspiracies, it was that they underestimated me completely. They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought I would never have the courage to defend myself. And in that, they made their biggest mistake. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room staring at the walls of this house that had been my refuge for so many years. Every corner had a memory. There on that sofa, Catherine and I had drunk coffee 1,000 times while she told me about her day. There at that table, I had helped Marcus with his math homework when he was a boy. There, next to that window, I had stood countless mornings looking at the garden I had planted with my own hands. This house was more than walls and a roof. It was my history. It was my sister alive in every room. It was the sweat of her work, the love of her sacrifice. And they wanted to rip it away from me as if I didn't have a right to my own life. But while the rage grew, something else grew too. A cold and calculating determination I had never felt before. If they could plan in secret, so could I. If they could conspire, so could I. If they could be ruthless, then I would learn to be. Because sometimes to survive, you have to become something you never thought you would be. Sunday morning, I woke up on the sofa with my body aching and my mind clearer than ever. It hadn't been a dream. Everything I had read was real. My son and his wife were in Miami spending my money while planning to steal my house. And I had a week before they returned. 1 week to change the course of this story, 1 week to stop being the victim and become something they would never expect. I got up, showered, dressed with care. I needed to think clearly. I needed a plan, but first, I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone I could trust, someone who wouldn't judge me, someone who understood. And there was only one person who met those requirements. Bernice, my neighbor of a lifetime, the woman who had been by my side when Catherine died, the only real friend I had left. I took my phone and texted her. "Bernice, I need to talk to you urgently. Can you come to my house this morning? It's important." She responded in 5 minutes. "Heading there in half an hour. Are you okay?" I wrote back, "No, but I'm going to be." When Bernice arrived, she found me sitting at the dining room table with my laptop open and all the screenshots organized in folders. She walked in with that look of worry only true friends have. "Althea, what's wrong? You look terrible." I poured her a coffee and without saying a word, passed her my phone. "Read this," I told her with a trembling voice. "I want you to read everything before we talk." Bernice took the phone and started reading. I watched her expression change with every screenshot. Surprise, disbelief, horror, rage. When she finished, almost half an hour later, she had tears in her eyes. "Althea, this is monstrous. How can they do this to you? Marcus is your son." I nodded while my own tears began to fall again. "I know, and I need your help. I need to get out of here before they come back. I need to protect myself, but I don't know how. I don't know where to start. Bernice got up, came around the table, and hugged me tight. We're going to fix this, I promise you. But first we need to think with a cool head. We need a lawyer. We need to document everything. And we need to act fast. We spent all Sunday planning. Bernice made calls to contacts she had. A lawyer named Mr. Sterling, who was a friend of her brother-in-law. A real estate agent, Mrs. Purnell, who had helped her sister. An accountant who could review my finances. By Monday morning, I had appointments scheduled with all three. The first meeting was with the lawyer. Mr. Sterling had a small but orderly office downtown. I showed him all the screenshots. I explained the complete situation. He listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. Mrs. Dollard, what your family is planning is fraud. It is financial abuse, and potentially, if they were to forge documents or your signature, it would be a serious felony. You have solid evidence here. You could report them criminally. But, and here he paused, that would take time. Months, maybe years of legal process. And meanwhile, they could continue living in your house, pressuring you, making your life impossible. Then what can I do? I asked desperately. Mr. Sterling leaned forward. You can protect yourself in a more effective way. You can sell the property. Right now, this week, it is your house. It is in your name solely. You do not need anyone's permission, and once sold, there is nothing they can steal. The idea hit me like a bolt of lightning. Sell the house, my house, Catherine's gift, the place where I had built so many memories. But what were memories compared to my dignity? What was a house compared to my freedom? My sister had given me this place to protect me, to give me security. Keeping it now would mean losing that security. It would mean staying trapped, waiting for them to strip me of everything. No. I decided in that moment I wasn't going to let that happen. If I have to sell, I will. If I have to leave, I will leave. But it will be on my terms, not theirs. Mr. Sterling nodded approvingly. It is the right decision. And I have another recommendation. You need to cancel those credit cards immediately. Report them as lost or stolen. That way, the charges they are making now will stop. Furthermore, you should consider filing a report for fraud. Your son used your cards without permission for unauthorized expenses. That is a crime. I felt a knot in my stomach. Report Marcus, my son? But then I remembered his words in those messages. My mama is docile. She isn't going to cause problems. And something in me hardened. All right, I'll make the report. I left Mr. Sterling's office with a list of actions to follow. First, call the bank and cancel the cards. Second, meet with the real estate agent to start the sale process. Third, begin packing my essentials. Fourth, look for a place to move to. Everything had to happen in the next 6 days before Marcus and Kesha returned. Bernice accompanied me to the bank. The manager who helped us was understanding when I explained the situation. Mrs. Dollard, I see here that your cards have had unusual activity in the last few days. Expenses in Miami totaling... She let out a low whistle. $18,000 so far. Luxury hotels, restaurants, clothing stores. This definitely does not match your usual spending pattern. $18,000 in 3 days. I felt dizzy, and they still had 4 more days of their trip left. The manager continued, I'm going to cancel all 3 cards immediately, and we are going to dispute all these charges as unauthorized. I'm also going to lock your account, so only you can make transactions. You will need to come in person for any major transaction. It is for your safety. That afternoon, I met with the real estate agent, Mrs. Purnell, a woman in her 50s with a professional but genuine smile. I need to sell my house fast, I told her directly. Very fast, in less than a week, if possible. She blinked, surprised. Mrs. Dollard, property sales normally take weeks, sometimes months. There are inspections, appraisals, negotiations. I understand you have an urgency, but 1 week is... I interrupted her. I am willing to sell below market value, 30–40% less if necessary. I just need it to close fast, and for the money to be in my account before next Wednesday. Mrs. Purnell looked at me with a mix of concern and curiosity. "This has to do with family trouble, doesn't it?" I nodded without giving details. She sighed. "All right, let me make some calls. I have investors who buy properties quickly with cash. They won't offer full price, but they can close in days if the property is legally clean." That is exactly what I need. By Tuesday afternoon, I already had 3 offers on the table. Mrs. Purnell had worked fast, contacting investors she knew. The best offer was $280,000 in cash. My house was worth at least $400,000 according to the recent assessment, but I didn't care. It wasn't about the money. It was about freedom. It was about ripping out of their hands what they believed was already theirs. I accepted the offer immediately. The buyer was an investor who wanted the property to remodel and resell. He didn't ask questions, he just wanted to close fast. Mrs. Purnell organized everything for Thursday. Signatures, transfer of funds, handing over keys, everything in one day. There were only 2 days left before Marcus and Kesha returned. 2 days to dismantle the life I had built here. 2 days to disappear. But I didn't feel sad. I felt powerful. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my own life. Meanwhile, I kept monitoring Marcus's old phone. They had no idea I knew everything. They kept sending messages to the family group, sharing photos of their luxurious vacation. Kesha posing on the beach in an expensive dress. Marcus in a fancy restaurant holding a glass of wine. Patricia and Raymond toasting on the balcony of their suite with an ocean view. All smiling, all happy, all spending my money as if it were theirs. Every photo infuriated me more, but also gave me more determination. They had underestimated this stupid old woman, and that was going to be their downfall. In the group, they kept talking about their plans. Kesha had written, "When we get back, we have to start phase 2. We need Marcus to record his mama in moments of confusion, even if it's small things. Not remembering where she left her keys, forgetting a date, anything we can use." Patricia responded, "Exact. And they have to be natural videos that don't look staged. We need to build a solid case." Marcus wrote, "I still feel bad about this." Kesha answered him fast, "Babe, we already talked about this. It's for our own good, for our future. Your mama is going to be better cared for, I promise you." Lies on top of lies. But I wasn't there to be their victim anymore. Wednesday, I started packing. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, important documents, photographs of Catherine, some objects with sentimental value. Bernice helped me. We worked in silence most of the time, only interrupted by my occasional tears when I found something that brought back memories. A photo of Marcus when he was a baby. A necklace Catherine had given me. The apron my late husband used when he barbecued on Sundays. Every object was a piece of my life I was leaving behind. But I had to do it. There was no other choice. Bernice hugged me when she saw me crying over a box of photos. "You're going to be all right, Althea. This isn't an ending, it's a beginning. A better beginning where no one is going to hurt you." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. While I packed, I also did other important things. I called the bank and transferred all my money to a new account in another state, an account only I knew about. I canceled all the utilities in my name at this house. Lights, water, gas, internet, everything. I scheduled the cancellations for Friday morning. I wanted that when Marcus and Kesha arrived Wednesday night, they would find an empty house, dark and with nothing. I also prepared something special. With the help of Mr. Sterling, the lawyer, I drafted a letter. A letter that explained everything, that showed them I knew every detail of their plan. That made it clear they had lost. The letter was hard, direct, with no room for misunderstandings. It started like this. "Marcus and Kesha, when you read this, I will have already disappeared from your lives. The house you planned to steal from me has already been sold. The money you thought you would inherit is protected in accounts you will never be able to touch. The credit cards you used for your luxury trip, without my permission, have been reported as fraud. Every charge you made is being disputed, and there is a criminal investigation in process. I know everything. I read every message, saw every plan. I know every insult you said about me." Stupid old woman. docile, easy to handle. You thought I was so weak I would never defend myself. You were wrong." The letter continued for 2 more pages, detailing every betrayal, every lie, every moment where they had demonstrated their true character. And it ended with this: "Marcus, I gave you life. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked until my body ached to pay for your college. I opened the doors of my house to you when you got married, and you repaid all that by planning to lock me in a facility while you stole the last gift my sister left me. Kesha, I welcomed you into my family with open arms. I never made you feel less, never treated you badly. And you called me a useless old woman and conspired to destroy me. To both of you, I say this: I am not going to press criminal charges, though I could. I am not going to expose you publicly, though I should. I am simply going to do what I should have done a long time ago: disappear from your lives, because finally I understood that you never loved me. You only loved what you could get out of me. Do not try to find me. Do not try to contact me. For me, you ceased to exist the day you decided to betray me. Have the life you deserve. Althea." Mr. Sterling helped me schedule the delivery of the letter. It would arrive by certified mail exactly Thursday afternoon, 1 day after I had disappeared, 1 day after they returned. I had another detail to add to the plan. I copied all the screenshots of the conversations and saved them on a USB drive. I left that drive with Mr. Sterling with specific instructions. If Marcus or Kesha try to look for me legally, if they try to cause problems, if they tell lies about me, you have permission to use this evidence. You can hand it to the authorities. You can show it to whoever is necessary. I want them to know that although I won't attack them, I'm not going to let them attack me either." Mr. Sterling locked the drive in his safe. "Althea, you did everything correctly. You protected yourself legally and emotionally. Now you just need to protect yourself physically. Where are you going to go?" I already had the answer. My cousin Sheila, not my neighbor Bernice, another cousin, lived in another state. We had been close as girls, but lost contact over the years. I had called her 2 days before, explaining my situation vaguely. She asked no questions. She only said, "Come, stay as long as you need. My house is your house." Thursday, the day of the signing, arrived. Mrs. Purnell picked me up early in the morning. We went to the notary's office where the buyer was already waiting. He was a businessman in his 40s, polite and efficient. We signed papers for an hour. Every signature was one more step toward my freedom. When we finished, the notary handed me a certified check for $280,000. I looked at it feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. This piece of paper represented 40 years of my life in that house, but it also represented my salvation. I went directly to the bank and deposited the check. The manager processed the transaction immediately. "The funds will be available in 24 hours, she told me. Perfect. By the time Marcus and Kesha returned, the money would already be safe in my new account in another state. Unreachable to them, protected, mine. I went back to the house for the last time that afternoon. The new owners would take possession Friday morning. I had this night to say goodbye. I walked through every empty room. My steps echoed in the silence. There was no furniture anymore, no pictures on the walls, nothing to say Althea Dollard had lived here for decades. I stood in the center of the empty living room and closed my eyes. I could see Catherine sitting in her favorite armchair, the one I had sold along with everything else. I could hear her laugh when she told me stories about her job. I could feel her hug the day she handed me the keys to this house, telling me, "Sister, this is yours forever. No one can ever take it from you." I never thought the one who would try to take it from me would be my own son. I opened my eyes, and the tears ran freely down my cheeks. "Forgive me, Catherine. I know I promised you I would never sell this house, but staying meant losing it anyway. At least this way, it was me who made the decision. It was me who had control. I hope wherever you are you can understand. I hope you know I did the only thing I could do to survive." I stood there until it got dark. Then I locked the door for the last time and handed the keys to Mrs. Purnell, who would give them to the new owners in the morning. I never went back inside that house. That night, I slept at Bernice's house, my neighbor. She had insisted I not spend my last night alone. She prepared a simple dinner, and we sat eating in silence. "Althea," she told me finally, "I know this hurts. I know you feel like you're losing everything. But I want you to know something. What you are doing is brave. Most people in your situation would let themselves be abused because they are afraid of being alone. You chose your dignity. That isn't cowardice. It is the bravest thing I have seen." Her words comforted me, but I still felt that emptiness in my chest, that sensation of having lost my son, because that was what hurt the most. Not the house, not the money. It was knowing that Marcus had betrayed me, that the boy I had raised, whom I had loved with every fiber of my being, had turned into a stranger capable of hurting me in the deepest way. "Bernice," I asked her with a broken voice, "at what moment did I lose him? At what moment did my son stop loving me?" She sighed and took my hand. "I don't know, Althea. Maybe he never stopped loving you. Maybe he just stopped prioritizing you. Maybe Kesha changed him. Or maybe, and forgive me for saying this, maybe he was always selfish and you never wanted to see it. Children aren't always what we want them to be. Sometimes they are exactly what we don't want to see." Her words hurt because they tasted like the truth. There were signs, years of signs that I had ignored. Marcus had always been a little selfish, a little inconsiderate. But I had justified it. "He's young," I told myself. "He'll mature, he'll learn." But he never matured. He only learned to hide his true nature better until he met Kesha and found someone who encouraged him to be his worst version. Friday morning, Bernice drove me to the bus station. I had decided not to fly. I didn't want to leave easy trails to follow. The bus was slower, but more anonymous. My cousin in the other state was waiting for me. The trip would take 2 days with several stops, 2 days to put distance between my previous life and my new reality. While I waited at the station, I received a message from Mr. Sterling, the lawyer. "Althea, I just received confirmation. The letter was delivered to your previous address. The new owners received it and kept it for when someone arrives asking for you. I also want to inform you that the bank formally processed the dispute of the card charges. Marcus is going to receive notification of the fraud investigation in the next few days. You did everything correctly. Now go with peace of mind." I responded, "Thank you for everything, Mr. Sterling. I don't know what I would have done without your help." He answered, "You protected your future. That is what you did. Take care of yourself." I put the phone away and looked around the station. People coming and going, each with their own stories, their own pains, their own battles. And I was one more, a 68-year-old woman, starting over, terrifying and liberating at the same time. Bernice hugged me tight before I got on the bus. "You're going to be okay. I know it. You are stronger than they ever imagined." I returned the hug with all my strength. "Thank you for everything, for believing me, for helping me, for being the only real friend I had." She had tears in her eyes. "Keep me informed. I want to know you arrived safely, that you are safe. Promise me." "I promise." I got on the bus and found my seat next to the window. As the vehicle started up and the city began to fade away, I thought about Marcus and Kesha. At that moment, they were enjoying their last day in Miami, spending the last dollars on my cards before they expired, taking photos to show off on social media, planning how they were going to continue with their scheme when they returned. They had no idea what awaited them. They had no idea their victim had disappeared, that their plan had collapsed, that the stupid old woman had turned out to be much smarter than they thought. And that gave me a dark but real satisfaction. It wasn't exactly revenge. It was justice. It was self-protection. It was survival. The bus crossed landscapes I had never seen. Open fields, small towns, mountains in the distance. Every mile took me further from my previous life. Every hour that passed brought me closer to my new reality. I thought a lot during that trip. I thought about all the times I had swallowed my pride, all the times I had accepted mistreatment because I was afraid of being alone. All the times I had prioritized Marcus's happiness over mine. And I realized something. It hadn't been love. It had been fear. Fear that if I didn't sacrifice constantly, if I didn't make myself small, if I didn't accept the crumbs of affection they gave me, then I would be completely alone. But now I was alone anyway. And strangely, it didn't feel as terrible as I had imagined. It felt like breathing after being underwater too long. I arrived at my destination Sunday afternoon. My cousin Sheila, whom I hadn't seen for almost 15 years, was waiting for me at the station. She recognized me immediately despite the time. "Althea," she said, hugging me. "Welcome home. This is your house now for as long as you need." Her apartment was small but cozy. She showed me the guest room she had prepared for me. "It isn't much," she apologized, "but it's comfortable and it's yours." I cried when I saw the bed with clean sheets, the towels folded on the dresser, the fresh flowers on the nightstand. I cried because someone had bothered to make me feel welcome, someone who didn't really know me, who owed me nothing, had done more for me in one day than my own son in years. That night, while unpacking my few belongings, I received a message from a neighbor back at my old house. "Althea, I don't know if you should know this, but Marcus and Kesha arrived an hour ago. It was chaos. They were screaming, crying, calling the police. The new owners showed them the sale papers. Marcus tried to force the door and almost got arrested. Kesha was screaming that this was impossible, that you couldn't have done this. Finally, they left. I heard Marcus say they were going to look for you. Thought you should know." "Thank you," I responded. "I am already far away. I am safe." I blocked Marcus's number that night, and Kesha's too. I didn't want to hear their excuses, their screams, their threats. I didn't need that poison in my new life. The following days were strange. I would wake up in the mornings not knowing where I was for a few seconds. Then reality would return. I was in another city, in another life. Far from Marcus, far from Kesha, far from everything I had known. My cousin gave me space, but also company. She didn't ask invasive questions, just let me be. In the mornings, we had breakfast together and she went to work. I spent the days walking around the neighborhood, getting to know the streets, looking for little places to drink coffee, trying to build a new routine, trying to heal. But wounds don't heal fast, especially those made by the people you love most. Every night I checked my phone expecting something. I didn't know what. Maybe an apology from Marcus. Maybe a message saying he was sorry, that he had made a mistake, that he still loved me. But nothing came. Just silence. And that silence hurt more than any insult. 1 week after my arrival, Mr. Sterling called me. "Althea, I need to inform you about some developments. Marcus tried to file a complaint against you for fraudulent sale of property. He alleged you were mentally incapacitated and that the sale should be annulled." My heart stopped. "And what happened?" Mr. Sterling laughed bitterly. "The judge reviewed the documents. He saw that you passed recent medical evaluations as part of the sale process. He saw that a notary certified your mental capacity. He saw that you acted with counsel present. And then he saw the evidence I presented of the conversations where they planned to declare you incompetent falsely. The case was dismissed in minutes. Furthermore, the judge warned Marcus that filing false reports could result in charges against him." I felt a relief so big I almost fainted. "So, they can't do anything? They can't touch the money? They can't reverse the sale? They can't force me to return?" "Exactly," Mr. Sterling confirmed. "Legally, you are completely protected. Besides, the bank confirmed the fraudulent charges on the cards. Marcus will have to pay everything back or face criminal charges, and Kesha is also implicated because she made some of the charges directly. They are in serious financial trouble now. After hanging up with Mr. Sterling, I sat on the small balcony of my cousin's apartment. I looked at the city I was barely starting to know, a city where no one knew my story, where no one saw me as the stupid old woman who had been deceived by her family. Here, I was just Althea, a woman starting over. And that felt like a gift. Days turned into weeks. I found a small apartment to rent. I didn't want to abuse my cousin's hospitality. It was a modest place, a single bedroom in a quiet building. But it was mine. No one had keys except me. No one could enter without my permission. No one could conspire against me inside these walls. I bought simple furniture, nothing fancy, just the necessary. A comfortable bed, a small table, an armchair to read in. I decorated with the few photographs I had brought. Catherine smiling at me from a frame on the nightstand, my late husband in another frame in the living room. Marcus was not in any visible photograph. I had brought some of him as a child, but I kept them in a box in the closet. I couldn't look at them without crying, without wondering where I had lost that sweet boy. 1 month after my arrival, I received an email from Marcus. I had changed my phone number, but he still had my email address. The message was long, erratic, full of rage and desperation. "Mama," it began, although it didn't feel like it came from a son. It sounded like a furious stranger. "How could you do this to us? How could you sell the house without telling us? That house was my inheritance. It was my future. Kesha and I had planned everything. We were going to have children there. We were going to build our life there, and you ruined everything. The bank is suing us for the cards. They say we committed fraud, that we owe $18,000 plus interest and penalties. We don't have that money. I lost my job because I couldn't concentrate with all this stress. Kesha left me. She said I was useless, that I couldn't even handle my own mother. She went back to her parents and they blame me for everything. I'm living in a horrible apartment. I can barely pay the rent, and everything is your fault. If you had been reasonable, if you had understood that we only wanted the best for you. But no, you had to be selfish. You had to think only of yourself after everything I did for you, after I put up with you all these years." I read the email 3 times. Every word was a knife, but not of pain, of clarity, because in that message I saw everything I needed to see. Marcus wasn't remorseful. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't recognize his betrayal. He was only angry because his plan had failed. He only blamed me for protecting myself. He said he had put up with me all these years, as if having me as a mother had been a burden, as if raising your son, loving him, sacrificing for him, was something for which he should receive gratitude. His thinking was so twisted it was scary. I replied to the email. It was the only time I did. My response was short. "Marcus, I read your message, and the only thing I see is that you still don't understand what you did. You didn't sell me your plan as something for my good. You conspired behind my back. You didn't ask me for the house. You planned to steal it from me. You didn't use my cards with permission. You committed fraud, and now that you face the consequences of your actions, you blame me. That tells me everything I need to know. There is nothing more to talk about between us. Do not contact me again. Althea." After sending that message, I blocked his email. I closed that door completely too. The following weeks were easier, without the constant anxiety of expecting messages from Marcus, without the weight of wondering if I should give him another chance, without the guilt he tried to impose on me for protecting myself. I began to go out more. I met other women in a reading group at the local library. Women my age who had also lived through losses, betrayals, new beginnings. I didn't tell them my full story at first, but little by little, I shared pieces, and I found something surprising. I wasn't the only one. Almost all of them had stories of relatives who had used them, hurt them, betrayed them. And all had to make difficult decisions to protect themselves. One of them, a lady named Loretta, told me something I will never forget. "Althea, society teaches us that mothers must sacrifice always, that we must endure everything because it is our duty. But no one teaches us that we also have a right to dignity, to respect, to say, enough. What you did wasn't abandoning your son, it was saving yourself. And that isn't selfishness, it's survival. I found a part-time job at a craft store. I didn't really need the money, but I needed purpose. I needed to feel useful. The owner was a kind woman who taught me how to make some pieces. I discovered I had talent for crafts. I started doing small projects, knitting, embroidery, decorations, things we sold in the store. And every piece I completed felt like a small victory, like proof that I could still create. I could still contribute. I still had value. The months passed. Autumn arrived with its golden colors. I had planted some flowers in pots on my small balcony. I tended to them every morning, watched them grow. And in those flowers, I saw my own transformation. I was also growing. I was also blooming, even though I had started in arid and rocky soil. I received one last piece of news from Mr. Sterling before closing that chapter completely. Althea, I thought you would want to know. Marcus and Kesha reached an agreement with the bank. They are going to pay the $18,000 in installments over 5 years. If they miss a single payment, they face criminal charges. I also learned that Marcus is working 2 jobs to be able to pay. And Kesha went back to him, but apparently the relationship is very deteriorated. Her family despises him for not having been able to get the house. Ironic, isn't it? What they wanted united them. What they lost is destroying them. Ironic was an understatement. It was poetic justice. They had conspired together, supported each other in their evil plan, laughed at me while spending my money. And now, that same destroyed plan was what kept them tied in a toxic relationship. Marcus trapped working like a slave to pay a debt that should never have existed. Kesha trapped with a man her family despised. Patricia and Raymond watching as their grand scheme not only failed, but left their daughter in a worse situation. I felt no pity for any of them. Maybe that made me cruel. Maybe I should have felt some compassion. After all, Marcus was still my son biologically. But the son I had raised, the boy I had loved, he didn't exist anymore, if he ever existed. Maybe it had just been an illusion I had created, a fantasy of perfect motherhood that was never real, and accepting that hurt. But it also liberated, because it meant I hadn't lost anything real. I had only let go of something I never had. Winter arrived in my new city. It was colder than the weather I was used to. I bought thick coats and learned to enjoy the cold. There was something purifying about it, as if every gust of icy wind took away another piece of the pain. I joined more activities, a walking group for seniors, a painting class at the community center. I even started taking computer classes because I wanted to learn to use technology better. I wanted to be independent in all aspects. I didn't want to ever depend on anyone again. In the painting class, I met a gentleman named Franklin. He was a widower, a few years older than me, with a gentle smile and sad eyes that understood loss. We didn't flirt exactly. We were 2 broken people learning to exist again. But there was a comfort in his presence, a silent understanding. One day after class, he invited me for coffee. I accepted. We sat in a small cafe and talked for hours. He told me about his wife who had passed from cancer 3 years ago, about his children who lived in other countries and rarely called him, about the loneliness of getting old when the people you thought would be there simply aren't. I told him my story for the first time. All my story from beginning to end. Marcus, Kesha, the plan, the betrayal, my escape. Franklin listened without interrupting. When I finished, I saw tears in his eyes. "Althea," he said, taking my hand across the table, "what you did was the bravest thing I have heard. And I am very sorry your son failed you in that way. But I want you to know something. The fact that he betrayed you does not mean you failed as a mother. It means he failed as a son." Those words broke something inside me. I cried there in that cafe. I cried for everything I had lost, for everything I had endured, for all the years I had believed I wasn't enough. Franklin didn't try to stop my tears. He just held my hand and waited. And when I finally calmed down, he smiled gently. "Now," he said, "let's talk about your future, not your past, about the good things that can still come." And we talked. For the first time in months, I talked about hopes instead of pain, about possibilities instead of losses, about the life I still had left to live. Franklin and I became close friends. There was no romance, not really, but there was companionship. We walked together on Sundays, went to the movies occasionally, cooked simple dinners in my apartment or his, and slowly, I realized I was building something I had never really had, a life of my own, not defined by being someone's mother, not defined by being someone's wife, just Althea, a woman with her own interests, her own friendships, her own choices, and that felt revolutionary. After 68 years, I was finally discovering who I was when no one needed me for something. 1 year after my escape, I received a physical letter, not from Marcus, from Patricia, Kesha's mother. That surprised me. The letter was brief, but shocking. Mrs. Dollard, I don't know if you will read this or if you hate me too much to consider my words, but I need to tell you something. My daughter Kesha left Marcus 3 months ago. She realized he wasn't the man she thought, or maybe she realized the plan we drew up was immoral and cruel. I don't know. What I know is that since all this exploded, my family hasn't had peace. Raymond and I fight constantly. He blames me for pushing the plan. I blame him for encouraging it. Kesha is depressed, in therapy trying to understand what kind of person she became. And me, well, I can't sleep at night. The letter continued. I keep seeing your face in my mind, the way you must have felt reading those conversations, discovering that your daughter-in-law's family, people who should have respected you, called you stupid old woman, conspired to steal your home. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that we didn't come out of this unscathed, that the cruelty we exercised against you is destroying us from the inside, and that if I could turn back time, I never would have suggested that horrible plan. But I can't. I can only live with the guilt, and I hope that you, wherever you are, have found peace, because you deserve it. We do not. Patricia. I read the letter several times. I felt many things. Rage, because the apology arrived too late. Satisfaction, because they were suffering consequences. Sadness, because all this could have been avoided if they had just chosen to be good people. But mainly, I felt indifference. Their guilt was not my problem. Their destroyed family was not my responsibility to fix. I had healed enough not to need their repentance. I didn't need their validation that what they did to me was wrong. I already knew that, and I had already moved on. I didn't answer the letter. I kept it in a drawer with all the other evidence from that time, documents I kept for legal reasons but no longer looked at. That chapter was closed. My life now was different, better, smaller in material terms perhaps. I no longer had a big house. I no longer had close family. But I had peace. I had dignity. I had choice. And that was worth more than any property, more than any forced relationship with people who didn't value me. Seasons kept changing. Spring arrived with its flowers and new beginnings. I was blooming too. My small craft business had grown. Now I sold my pieces at local fairs in addition to the store. I knew my neighbors. I had routines. I had purpose. One afternoon, while organizing my things, I found an old photo of Marcus when he was 5 years old. He was smiling, hugging a teddy bear, his eyes full of innocence. I looked at that photo for a long while, and finally I could separate the child from the man. I could cry for the child I loved without feeling obligation toward the man who betrayed me. I could honor the good memories without letting them tie me to a toxic relationship. And that, I understood, was real healing. Franklin visited me that night. We had planned to have dinner together. While we cooked, I told him about the photo, about how finally I could look at it without feeling that sharp pain in my chest. He smiled while chopping vegetables. Althea, that means you are healing for real. It isn't forgetting. It is learning to remember without bleeding. He was right. The memories didn't bleed me anymore. I didn't wake up at night with panic attacks anymore. I didn't compulsively check my phone expecting messages that would never arrive. I didn't blame myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I had reached a place of acceptance. Things happened. They were terrible. But I survived. And not only survived, I was thriving in my own way. After dinner, Franklin and I sat on the balcony watching the stars. The spring air was soft and scented. "Althea," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever think about contacting Marcus? About giving him a chance to apologize properly?" I considered the question honestly. I used to think about it the first few months. Every day. But not anymore. Because I realized something. He knows where I am. If he really wanted to find me, Mr. Sterling has my information. He could contact me through him, but he hasn't done it. And that tells me he still doesn't understand what he did wrong. He still believes I exaggerated, that I was cruel. Until he can see his own guilt, there is no conversation possible. Franklin nodded, understanding. "You are wise, Althea. Many people in your situation would have let themselves be manipulated again, would have fallen into guilt and gone back. You chose your peace. That isn't selfishness. It is self-love. And self-love is something that took me 68 years to learn." We sat in silence, enjoying the night. And in that silence, I found something I had never had in my old life: real tranquility. Not the superficial calm of pretending everything was okay, but the deep peace of knowing I was exactly where I needed to be. 2 full years have passed since that night I read the messages on Marcus's phone. 2 years since my life exploded and I had to rebuild it from scratch. And now, sitting in this small apartment that is completely mine, I can say with honesty that I wouldn't change anything. Yes, I lost my house, but I gained my freedom. Yes, I lost my son. But I found myself. And that trade, however painful it was worth every tear. My routine now is simple, but satisfying. I wake up early and drink coffee on the balcony while I watch the sunrise. I work on my crafts in the mornings. In the afternoons, I walk through the park or visit the library. Weekends, I spend time with Franklin and with the friends I've made in my classes. They are small pleasures, nothing extraordinary, but they are mine. No one can take them from me. No one conspires to steal this life from me because I didn't build anything others can covet. I built peace. And that cannot be transferred. It cannot be sold. It cannot be stolen. I have learned so much in these 2 years. I learned that family isn't always blood, that the people who owe you the most loyalty are sometimes the first to betray you, that constant sacrifice doesn't generate gratitude, but expectations. That saying no is an act of self-love, not cruelty, that being alone is not the same as being abandoned, and that starting over at any age is possible if you have the courage to take the first step. The first step is always the hardest, but every step after becomes a little easier. Occasionally I receive news of my old life through acquaintances. I learned that Marcus finally finished paying off the card debt after almost 2 years of constant work. I learned that Kesha tried to go back to him briefly, but finally left him for good. I learned that Patricia and Raymond divorced due to the stress and mutual blame. I learned that Marcus now lives alone in a very modest apartment, working a job that barely makes ends meet. And although a part of me, that maternal part that never dies completely, feels a pang of sadness for him, the greater part of me feels only indifference. He made his choices. I made mine. He chose betrayal and greed. I chose dignity and survival. Both of us live now with the consequences of those choices. There is nothing more to discuss. Sometimes I wonder if Marcus thinks of me, if he regrets it, if he finally understands the magnitude of what he did. But those questions don't keep me up at night anymore. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter. His regret, or lack of it, doesn't change my reality. It doesn't give me back the years of mistreatment. It doesn't erase the insults he wrote about me. It doesn't undo the plan he hatched to rob me. And definitely, it doesn't rebuild the trust he destroyed. I have decorated my apartment with things that bring me joy, plants in every window, paintings I painted myself in art class, photographs of Catherine smiling, a blanket knitted by Loretta, my friend from the reading group, books piled next to my favorite armchair. It is a small space, but it is full of love, self-love, love from the real friendships I have cultivated. And that is enough. More than enough. It is abundance after years of emotional scarcity. The other day, while organizing my closet, I found the box with the photos of Marcus as a boy. I took it out and looked at them one by one. I didn't cry anymore. I just felt a gentle melancholy for that time that no longer exists, for that child who grew up and turned into someone I do not recognize. But I also felt gratitude, because that experience, however devastating it was, taught me the most important lesson of my life. It taught me that I matter, that my well-being matters, that my dignity is not negotiable, and that never, never again am I going to allow someone to treat me as if I were disposable. Franklin proposed a few months ago that we move in together. Not as a romantic couple necessarily, although there is deep affection between us, but as life partners. Two people who have been hurt and who choose to heal together. I am considering it, not because I need it, but because I want to. And that difference is fundamental. Before, I needed Marcus. I needed his approval, his presence, his affection. And that need made me vulnerable to his abuse. Now, I am complete on my own. If I choose to share my life with Franklin, it will be from a place of fullness, not lack. And that makes all the difference in the world. A few days ago, I received an unexpected email. It was from a young woman who had heard my story through Loretta. She wrote, "Mrs. Dollard, I don't know you personally, but my friend told me your story. I want you to know that you inspired me to leave an abusive relationship with my family. I spent years being the ATM for my brothers and parents. I felt guilty for setting boundaries. But your story showed me that protecting myself isn't betraying them. It's saving myself. Thank you for your courage." It made me cry for the right reasons, because my pain had served for something. It had helped another person find their own strength, and that gave meaning to everything that had happened. This morning, while drinking my coffee on the balcony, I thought about all the road traveled. From that terrible night reading the betrayals on Marcus's phone to this moment of peace. It wasn't easy. There were nights where I believed I wouldn't survive the pain. There were moments where I doubted my decisions, where I asked myself if I had been too hard, if I should have given them another chance. But every time those thoughts arrived, I remembered their exact words. Stupid old woman. Easy to handle. Too submissive. And I remembered that I hadn't misunderstood anything. I hadn't exaggerated anything. They really conspired to destroy me, and I really chose to survive. If I could speak to the Althea of 2 years ago, to that woman trembling while reading those horrible messages, I would tell her this. I know you are afraid. I know you feel like you are losing everything. But what you are losing isn't worth keeping. What comes after the pain is better than you can imagine. You are going to discover a strength you didn't know you had. You are going to find people who value you for real. You are going to build a small but beautiful life. And you are going to be okay, more than okay. You are going to be in peace. And to anyone reading this, to anyone identifying with my story, I want to tell you the same. If you are being abused by your family, if they are using you, if you are being treated as if you didn't matter, I want you to know that you do have options, that you are not trapped, that choosing your dignity over a toxic family doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a survivor. It makes you brave. And although the road will be difficult, although there will be pain and loss, on the other side there is life, there is peace. There is the possibility to finally be who you really are without having to shrink yourself to make people happy who are never going to value you. Don't stay waiting for things to get better on their own. Don't stay believing that if you sacrifice a little more, finally you will receive the love you deserve. Because the people who really love you don't demand you destroy yourself to prove your loyalty. Real love doesn't hurt constantly, it doesn't manipulate, it doesn't conspire, it doesn't betray, and you deserve real love. Even if that love comes from friends instead of family, even if it comes from yourself first. Today is a beautiful day. The sun is shining and there is a soft breeze. I'm going to go out walking with Franklin. Later we have the craft fair where I'm going to sell my pieces. Tonight we will have dinner with Loretta and other friends. It is a simple life, quiet, no drama, no betrayals, no conspiracies, and it is the most beautiful life I have lived. Because it is mine, completely mine. No one can take it from me because it is not based on material possessions that can be stolen. It is based on inner peace that I earned after the storm. Marcus never found me. He never really tried to apologize through the channels he had available. And that tells me everything I need to know. He lost his mother the day he decided to betray her. I lost my son the day I discovered who he really was. And we both go on living. But only one of us is in peace. Only one chose dignity over greed. Only one is truly free. And that person is me, Althea Dollard, 68 years old, survivor, free. And finally, after a lifetime of sacrifice for others, living for myself, and I don't regret a thing. Looking back, I can finally admit this to myself: I stayed too long. I ignored the warning signs. I excused cruelty as stress betrayal, as misunderstanding, and silence as peace. If I could give you one piece of advice, it would be this: don't do what I did. Don't wait until respect is gone. Don't sacrifice your dignity just to keep the illusion of family alive. This story is not about revenge, it is about survival. In so many family drama stories, pain is normalized and disguised as duty. In too many grandma stories, older women are expected to endure quietly, to give endlessly, and to disappear without complaint. I believed that lie for years until I understood that silence was slowly breaking me. Through everything I learned something important: God does not ask us to accept abuse. God gives us strength, not chains. And when I finally chose to protect myself, I realized God was not disappointed in me. He was guiding me out of danger. Even now, I believe God carried me through fear, guilt, and loneliness toward peace. The lesson is simple, but hard. Love without respect is not love. Family without boundaries becomes a prison. These family drama stories exist because too many people confuse sacrifice with virtue. And these grandma stories keep repeating because women like me are taught to stay silent instead of safe. Thank you for staying until the end. Please leave a comment and tell me, if you were in my place, would you have stayed longer or would you have walked away sooner? Let me know you're still here with me. And please be warned, the next story includes some fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this isn't for you, feel free to exit and choose content that suits you better.